really knows what the Torah says, and he becomes a believer of Yeshua, he will show you things in the scripture that you Christians have never seen before. In fact, it's kind of interesting. One of the things that he'll show you, for example, is, that little Christian symbol about the fish? We have that little fish symbol that we go around. And I know you Christians have had some kind of an interesting explanation about that. Ichthus, and it has to do with some kind of an acronym concerning Jesus from the Greek. No, that's not what it is. It's actually the Aramaic letter for the Hebrew letter Nun, is really what it is, the Hebrew letter Nun. You see, it turns out that in the scripture, in the Torah, that's copied by the scribes, there's a place in the Torah where they take that letter Nun and they draw it backwards. It's a scribal mark. They draw it backwards. It's in the book of Numbers, chapter 10, the last two verses. There's one of those drawn in front of verse 34, and there's one after verse 35. And the fish symbol is what the letter Nun is all about. So in the Aramaic, they just draw a little symbol like a fish, but it's really the letter Nun in Hebrew. And the letter Nun has a particular teaching in the Hebrew. It's called the quickening of life. And it's the picture of you go out to a lake and suddenly a fish is out in the lake and it splashes. I don't know about you guys, but I always do this. I go to the lake, there's a splash of the fish, and I always get excited. And I say, there's a fish in the lake. Look, there's a fish. Of course there's fish in the lake, Monty. The thing is full of fish. Why are you getting all excited because one of them splashed? Well, it's that moment we call the quickening of life, where we take note. When you draw the letter backwards, what does it mean? It means the quickening of life from the dead. It means the resurrection. That fish symbol that all of the new Christians used to carry around, the biggest thing that was happening to them was the resurrection of Yeshua. They would use that as a signal amongst the believers. Oh, I believe in the resurrection of Yeshua. You believe in the resurrection of Yeshua. We're believers, and so forth. That's what that symbol means. Did you know that comes from the law? That comes from the law of Moses. Did you know that a Torah teacher, that scribe, would tell you about that? Those two verses that thing is in the front of and the back of, there's more wisdom in those two verses than there is in the entire book of Genesis, the entire book of Exodus, the entire book of Leviticus, the entire book of Deuteronomy. Wow, what do those verses say? Those two verses. The first one is, "Arise, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered." That's the prophecy of the Messiah coming out of the grave, defeating death and defeating his enemies. The second one is, "Return, O Lord, to the myriads of Israel's families." He's talking about our resurrection, when the Messiah returns to the earth and we are resurrected. Did you know that in a synagogue, the Jews do this every Sabbath? When they open up the ark to bring the Torah scroll out, they can't that first verse. "Arise, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered." They show the picture of the Messiah coming out of the grave.
Wow.
And when they put it away, they talk about him returning to our benefit. I agree with them. The wisdom in those two verses is